Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ken. I'm a reporter at VentureBeat, covering all things social, marketing, developer, enterprise, and all that fun stuff, especially a lot of the platforms that bots are built on these days, Slack, Kik, Line, all those type of things. And we're going to be talking about what bots are being used for by brands, and also hear from people that are making them and the platforms that are using them. So why don't we go down the line and have everyone introduce themselves?
Awesome. Hey guys, so my name is Omar from Reply.ai. We are an enterprise bot platform, very focused on insurance, utility, and airlines. And we actually compete with these guys about a newsletter with VentureBeat. I think they beat us already because they have thousands of editors. But yeah, we are trying to go there. We have chatbotswilly.com that is going to beat them. But anyway, that's it.
Good luck.
Hi, my name is Segio Silva from Kik. I run a team of data analysts, engineers, and bot UX specialists, and really primarily work with tier 1 brands and chat agencies or bot platforms to try and deliver lighthouse experiences on the Kik platform.
Great. My name is Lesicko. I run a team called AOL Alpha, which I'm sure most of you have never heard of. The AOL part, yes. But so we run essentially emerging platforms and new technology for AOL, running across all of our brands, including the Huffington Post. I'm allowed to name some of them.
Yeah, you're totally
Huffington Post, TechCrunch, Engadget, Moviefone, etc. And so we kind of run the bot strategy as well as OTT and mobile development, things like that.
Hi, I'm Andrew Pinzler. I work on NBC's Today Show. I run what we call the Innovation Lab. It's actually very similar to Drew's job description, which will only help with the whole Drew-Andrew confusion. Yeah, exactly. But yes, we experiment with how to expand the Today Show brand into new technologies and emerging platforms. And also, I'll say right now, because I imagine it might help with some of the questions we might get later, the Today Show is part of NBC News. So my work sometimes expands into some of the brands outside of the Today Show related to NBC News, but not NBC Entertainment. So I have nothing to do with The Voice or The Blacklist or The Tonight Show.
Is Friends coming back?
Right. Yeah.
Friends 2018? I heard his thing.
Cool. So why don't we start off with talking about with Drew and Andrew. I mean, you're talking about experimenting with bots, and what is the Today Show doing with bots, and also with the with AOL? Like, you have so many different media properties. Like, how do you find the right bot for these media properties?
The obvious example of the Today Show bot that we do is we launched not long after the Facebook Messenger sort of platform opened up. We launched the Today Food bot on because the Today Show has several sort of sub-brands that have their own Facebook pages and presences. And so the Today Food was sort of an obvious choice for us to start experimenting with, because we have basically structured data around the recipes that we have, unlike the other things where we have a lot of articles and a whole bunch of different things, but it's not really structured data. So we were able to take that sort of that pre-existing internal API and create a sort of a quick chat bot that we can sort of throw at our users and experiment with, like, is this even something that our users want to interact with? And then, similarly, not today related, but NBC News related, we launched an experiment. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was on the NBC News politics page. In the run-up to the election, it was a native video experiment where you could sign up for a sort of what we called a daily edition, and it would be every afternoon we'd send you 3 video clips that would play natively inside Facebook Messenger to just sort of experiment that, because it's something we'd never done before. So I don't know if that actually answered your question.
Why? Well, it does. But
Right.
why go after? Why elect to use a bot for those particular things? One for the food, and then one for politics, as opposed to other means.
Sure. So, I mean, again, it's just because, I mean, the nature of my job is experimenting on new platforms. So that's sort of how we sort of go about this. These things are announced, and we sort of look at them and decide, like, is this something that we think our users would be interested in? And a lot of the times it's just a matter of sort of trying to be agile about it. Like, how quickly can we spin one up and show it to our users? And then, like, chatbots in particular are sort of, as was mentioned at, I think, several earlier panels, is a great way to just sort of you can throw an idea at the users and get immediate feedback from them and try to tweak or just decide we don't want to do this anymore. So that's sort of, again, that's why we sort of decided the chatbots, and the video thing came about just because there was this like point in time thing of the election. So it was like how can we do an experiment with something it was a relatively new thing that Facebook Messenger could do this thing where you could sort of preload photos and video, so the video would actually load really quickly in Facebook Messenger, and we just wanted to be like, this was announced, how can we do it? Oh, we have this thing coming up, let's put those two things together and see if people are interested.
Gotcha. Drew, as for AOL, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, like, our strategy is always about distribution and amplification of our content. So we want to be on the biggest platforms. People talk about Messenger all the time, but in the U.S., daily active users on Messenger is about 75 million, which is twice the size of Snapchat, 3 times the size of Twitter. So there's no reason to not play in that space. And so that's what we kind of went in, kind of deciding like that's what we wanted to understand how people were going to use it. And when we look at it, it's all about, it's always that same question is like, if you were going to have a conversation with the Huffington Post, what would you expect? And what would you want that conversation to be? And that's really the direction that we've gone in with all of our bots, whether it was, an Engadget asking for like, what are the best headphones on the market, or give me the latest news on Apple, or, and on, Huffington Post, when we launched it, we really focused on Trump first. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Huffington Post. We talk a lot about Trump. But we're actually changing that. Our new slogan, as we've relaunched in the last couple weeks, is "We are listening." And so we've kind of gone to this place where we're allowing you to have kind of a personal conversation with Lydia Paul-Green, who's our editor-in-chief, and kind of having a one-on-one conversation and experience with her in terms of like what she's watching, what she wants to get in front of users moving forward. And we think that's a great story to tell, and really to speak to people that feel like we don't hear them.
Gotcha. Sergio and Omar, for a platform and the bot maker themselves, kind of a similar question. What are you guys seeing in terms of the interesting use cases? And I want to call out that about maybe a few months ago, David Marcus from Facebook, he admitted that bots themselves were overhyped following about a year after they launched their Messenger platform. How are you guys seeing the bot ecosystem now, and how are brands taking advantage of it to provide actual real value to their customers and users?
Good question. We're obviously chat first and mobile first, and I think the way we view chat, it'll be the sort of the hub of all your everyday life, from conversations with your friends and family to interactions or other experiences that encompass entertainment, media, shopping, and utility. And so, it's interesting to hear these guys talk about distribution, using channels like Kik and Facebook as distribution channels. What's interesting for me is, what are the engagement models that drive, engagement, interaction, virality? We've experimented a lot, probably a year before the Facebook API got launched, and we initially worked with Washington Post for the first time. They were probably one of the first publishers to experiment in this space, and we really had a very basic model where they used keyword engine, very basic, no AI whatsoever, a very simple bot, and they used the keyword engine to define, it was a Kiktionary, they called it Kiktionary, so they would start to reveal, if you answered correctly, Obama's face, so you would show Obama's eyes, and then if you had to guess who it was. So little simple executions like that, and something like what we're experimenting a lot with are group interactions, and we see a lot of success there. For example, the role bot, which I think there was an article in VentureBeat about that. In the first 30 days, it reached 500,000 subscribers.
And what does the robot do?
Robot, very, very simple. It's something you play in a group. You get it to ask a question. So, for example, if we were all talking to the robot, I would say, "Who's paying for dinner?" And then it would randomly pick Ken. Those type of things. So what happened was we did no promotion, and it's now at 2 million subscribers. So it's huge. And 5% of those are from our bot shop, and 95% of the user growth are from what we call the @mentions feature, which is pulling bots into group conversations. So I think where we're at the moment is to start to define engagement models that matter to our demographic, which are teens, and really which will then drive the monetization possibilities in the future.
Okay.
So on our side, with our clients, we usually focus on any metric that is not engagement. So it's very funny to say this, but yeah, we usually ask them like, okay, what do you expect from this? What is your biggest pain point that you have? So in our case, like for example, we did a Kia Motors bot, and we asked them, hey guys, so what's your biggest pain? Today they want to launch a new car, which was Niro, and okay, what do you want? And they said, okay, we want test drives because we have not launched yet. And the only objective of that bot was to get test drives. And they delivered very good results. I think they sold like 3,000 cars. I cannot say the percentage here, but from the bot, no, I don't think they will kill me. But I think there's a big percentage came from the bot, and that's very interesting. If you have a clear ROI that you really want to get from that, I think that's the success. You don't need to do a bot just because bots are in hype. You really need to focus on a very, very simple thing, execute well, and iterate from there.
Okay. So I want to know in terms of, I guess for a lot of the bots has been around Facebook Messenger, it's been around Kik and those type of things, but bots are being more prevalent within voice-activated voice assistants such as Alexa and Google Home and those type of things. How should brands think about going into those areas versus like a chatbot or anything like that? I mean, Drew, do you have any thoughts about that? Or
Sure. I mean, that's a space that we play in a lot, and I'm sure that you guys do too. I think the way that we think about it is it's agnostic. We want to build a platform and a back end that can talk to any place. Mm-hmm. So, what we're building is a back end for our Alexa skills, our Google Home skills, or our Facebook Messenger bots. They shouldn't be different from each other. It's just the API endpoints that you're building out that you can plug into a front end system. So if we feel like there's a value with plugging the Huffington Post into Kik, we can do that. There's no real difference in terms of front end and user experience. And it's all a guessing game. Mm-hmm. Who's going to win at the end? So I know there's some Google people here. We're going to put our bets into Google Home and into Alexa. We hope both of them the best, but at the same time, we just want to be in places where there's growth and the users are, and we're going to be completely agnostic to that, and then hopefully one of them is going to win, or maybe they all win, and it's all kind of beneficial to everybody at the end of the day. Oh, sure.
I just want to I a little bit disagree with that. It's mainly because I think that every platform really should be very native to that. So in the case, for example, of Kik, you really need to talk, the audience, Kik are very young people, so you really need to change the bot in order to reflect that. And in the case of choosing, for example, let's go to Alexa, let's go Google Home. So I will just start with one, and very simple bot, and then learn from there before expanding and doing a Kik, Messenger, Twitter, Alexa, and Google Home. I think if you have those 5, you're not going to learn from those 5. You really need to focus on one, and where is your audience is.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that can go into that. I mean, we're not going to change the Huffington Post fundamentally based on where the user is interacting with it. So I think that the conversation with the Huffington Post tends to be one-sided. And sometimes there's just platforms that don't make sense for that. The same thing with the TechCrunch user. I think it depends on the brand. It also depends on what you're building out. I think that if it's about amplification just purely of content and learning what the scale is on those, I think we can build something that's fairly even across experiences. But I totally agree with you. Like if we're going on Kik, we would most likely kind of focus in on like one of our brands like Cambio, which is focused in on kind of a teen style, like a Gen Z style TMZ. It's like, okay, what are the Kardashians doing today? And that's not going to be the normal Huffington Post thing, but it's a combination of content and experience. But I agree, and I think that if something were to take off, we would see millions of interactions on something, we would then build on top of that and make it fully native. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, I want to add to that as well. I think I agree with you. And we've got a really good example with CNN. CNN wanted to talk to all audiences, and so they were on Facebook and they were also on Kick. And what they did on Kick was entirely different to what they did on Facebook. We've got a younger demographic. They changed the conversation to suit teens. We also used GIFs, emojis, and stickers to insert, the brand into everyday conversation. And that worked amazing. It was like, I think we got 5 million interactions on the election day, 17.5 billion impressions on the GIFs that were produced throughout the day as well. And so I think the way that we look at it, and I think it's very similar to the way you approach it, it is, you're building for your audience. All the audiences are completely different, and each of them have got nuances that you should sort of take into account. And then, again, keep it simple, talk to your audience, make it conversational, and trying to look at what other assets or what other parts of the conversations that you can connect. Like what we think about is creating connected conversations on the platform, and bots are part of that story.
Gotcha. Oh.
As I said, coming from also just a giant corporation, one of the most disheartening things that I can hear after pitching various sort of higher up about this bot that we want to potentially launch is having them turn around and be like, that's great. How do we sort of automate all of it so we don't have to hire anybody new or take anyone's time away from anything? So basically take our tweets and put them in a bot, then we don't have to do anything. And that's just, again, the thing I have to constantly fight against. We can take the data set and provide a different voice around that sort of shell to create what makes more sense. And so today doesn't have an Alexa skill, but if you go to my Twitter feed, my office mate tweeted out, so I guess it's now public, we were experimenting with, because part of the reason, talking about being sort of targeting the right audience, Alexas tend to be, or Echoes tend to be in kitchens and living rooms. So the thing we're thinking about is maybe not just a generic today skill, but a today home skill where you can say, how do I get X out of Y? How do I get, as the example says in this really embarrassing video, I ask it, how do I get poop out of my clothes? And we sort of amass the data from all the various articles we've written into sort of a stain library. That we may not actually launch this thing, but it's something we're experimenting with that seems a little bit more targeted to the platform while keeping the today voice and building on top of sort of pre-existing data.
Do you guys see your experiments? How do you assess whether it's success or not? How do you figure okay, maybe we need to tweak this, or maybe just in general bots aren't your thing?
I mean, it really, you have to, whenever you're experimenting, you have to define some sort of success metric in advance. So, for us, it's engagement, it's amplification, it's, how many articles are getting out per post, how many users are coming back into our experience. So, that's really where it comes. I mean, when we look at, for instance, our Huffington Post bot that we launched, it's unique users, it's daily actives. The one stat that has been incredible for us has been retention. So we have a retention, a 90-day retention of 75%, which is crazy compared to most of our initiatives. So that shows that even though if the users, I mean, the things that we always deal with in these things are our products get hundreds of millions of users a day. And so these bot experiences might get tens of thousands of users a day. So you have to figure out what the experience is going to be, what the engagement, and how you kind of temper expectations. Because also I'm sure we're in the same boat where I'm talking to Tim Armstrong and he's like, well, why the fuck are we doing this? And I'm like, oh, well, we're building a brand. And Tim wouldn't say the F word, by the way, just in case someone's tweeting. And so we have to kind of say that, look, we're about building brands, we're about building experiences, and sometimes you do that 10,000 users at a time, not 10 million users at a time.
And Omar, I mean, for someone that's that focuses on customer success, you said earlier that you're focusing on different metrics. What kind of how do your customers define what's a success or not?
At the end, in an abstract way, is reduce the friction to provide a service, because at the end, bots is about providing a better service as the alternative channel. So in this case, we are working with an airline that, well, I cannot say, okay, but it's mainly containment rate. What's the containment rate for that question? Then there is also success around the ROI that they expect. So for key hours test drives, okay, how many test drives? So it's very use case specific, but at the end of the day, if it's not a marketing bot, it's going to be something. It's going to be a number that is not only the daily active users. So it's going to be something. And the brands always want, at the end, a little bit more of engagement. I think that the core thing should be something else. And engagement should be an optional metric. If you are providing that service very quickly, if you focus on customer support, customer service, that makes sense.
Gotcha. Sergio, in terms of, can you give us any updates in terms of how Kick's doing, in terms of how many bots are on the platform right now, and why brands should give you more of their time and attention and resources?
I thought I wasn't meant to be pitching. Yeah, so we've got over 30,000 bots on the platform. Again, we're pretty focused on the teen audience. We own the space, and really what we see is that teens are more engaged than any other demographic. And so as brands start to look at different platforms, they'll probably start to see the engagement numbers index higher than other platforms. And the things that we measure are probably three things: interactions, number of interactions, retention, and virality. And for us, what we're really interested in is building communities within Kick, and then how do brands start to insert themselves into those communities to make a difference.
Cool, awesome. So. As much as I love hearing myself talk and ask questions, I want to definitely make this a little bit more conversational. So if anybody has any questions, I mean, I'll continue asking questions as well, but they're here for you. So anybody have any questions for brands, please raise your hand and we'll get a mic out to you and talk about, and you can ask your question. But in terms of just bots in general, I mean, aside from your own, what are some of the what bots are out there now that are doing some creative stuff that you admire and could possibly integrate into your own bots?
Well, I know a few use cases that are very unknown for the community in LATAM, in Latin America. For example, there is the clone of Postmates, and I think they are making like 30K a month bot first. So they have only a bot in order to be the next Postmates of Latin America. Or we have another client which is Apply, which is also a recruitment bot first company, and they are doing great because they focus on making the experience and reducing the friction to do something else. So I don't think it's about bots. It's about, okay, is a conversational strategy the best for your use case? We don't need to think of bots as, okay, let's do a bot. So these guys really nail down the experience to have a much better experience than the alternatives. A person who wants a job, a very short job of 4 hours, temporal jobs, they don't want to download an app. Most likely they are going to go to the bot and do something very quickly and receive notifications. So at the end of the day, it's about what is the best experience that you can have.
One that I just love is, and I know they're here, but Poncho. What I've always loved about what they do is they seem to build a relationship with the user, and they have a specific voice, which is something that I think we still struggle with. What exactly is the voice of TechCrunch? I don't know. Is it Matt Panzanaro? Is it, is there something different? The same thing with the Huffington Post. It's not Ariana anymore. Is it Lydia? And how do you find that voice? So, we try to struggle with it and find the right tone and figuring out who our user is going to be. The comparison I always give to my team is that, when I talk to people over Messenger, I only talk to people that I actually like talking to or enjoy talking to. So why would I talk to someone that's boring? or dull and doesn't have any personality. Like there's no reason to do that. Poncho has a personality. I think when apps do have that, it kind of brings it over to the edge. It's actually someone that I look forward to talking to or hearing from on a daily basis. And so I think at AOL, we're struggling to find that, and that's something that we're going to be experimenting on a lot over the next few months. But that's something that I kind of envy.
I mean, it's not really a bot, but I'm really a big fan of what Purple does in news, and that's basically driven by a people or a person, and they're sending out alerts, and there is a little bit of automation in there, but it's much more about the here's a person with a voice, and this is something interesting that we thought you'd find today. And there was a little bit of that in what we were talking about with the politics bot of we assumed that anyone signing up for a politics bot during the election season, this was at best their secondary, if not really their tertiary news source. So we needed to take that moment of here's someone who's gotten the news already. What's the interesting thing that maybe they might have missed that we can pull out and provide some actual sort of value on top of all this other stuff that you're getting, as opposed to just giving you the same headlines that you may have gotten already from us, if not from lots of other people.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you bring up is a tough position right now in terms of large brands. I don't know if maybe someone in here would disagree with this, but I don't think bots right now are at a place where they're ROI positive enough that we could that we could have dedicated resources to it. Maybe we can steal some people from social, we can steal some people from someplace else. But so if we want to have a great, a fully fleshed out bot experience, we're trying to kind of piecemeal it together where possible until we can figure out the revenue model, and we're trying to do that right now. But until I can figure out some sort of ROI positive means that I have a steady revenue stream coming in from our bot strategy, it's going to be for a little while piecing together people and kind of finding places where we can do stuff.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you're thinking about your strategy, then
go ahead.
Our strategy is, to work with publishers to build out engagement models. Mm-hmm. With the third phase, then, to work out what the monetization model, can support the engagement model. Is that how you're looking at it, or you're going straight to monetization?
We're trying to build engagement first, but when you're at a place like AOL or Oath, later on, you have to show revenue quickly. You have to show opportunity quickly because you never know after a couple weeks whether something's going to be focused on something else that's already ROI positive. So you're constantly and I think that this is part of the innovation struggle too, is you're constantly trying to prove your value to a large company because revenue's all here. If 75% of revenue is still desktop, how do you leverage and how do you make sure that you have resources against all of the new things coming up? And there's millions of them. Are we concentrating on AR or VR or bots or there's 100 new things every day? So where are we going to spend our time? And so that's why we have to start showing traction on something fairly quickly and scale. Because also at the end of the day, you're well, this article about how Beyonce's twins got 5 million views in the last 2 hours. Your bot had 10,000 people on it. Why are we not spending more time making Beyonce posts and doing instead of bots? And I'm sure that we would all say the vision is that this is where the growth opportunity is going to be. But we still have to kind of prove that out.
So are you bullish about bots, or?
Oh yeah. So I don't mean it to sound like I'm not bullish on bots. I'm super bullish on bots. Yeah. No. I think that it's an amazing interaction point. It's a great way for us to. I think everything right now is about building a one-on-one relationship with our users and something that feels personalized with them. And so that's the direction that we want to go. It's just, again, you're constantly we need to grow. We need to kind of concentrate and figure out how to build this platform up.
But as you're talking about the bots, and Omar, we'll get to you next. But how do you're talking about the ROI, let's talk about the monetization. How has AOL, has NBC, has for Sergio and Omar, your clients, have they thought about how they're going to monetize it beyond the traditional subscription, or should advertising be allowed on these bots? Have you guys thought about those?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully advertising is going to be okay on bots because that's our business model. Yeah, I mean, what we've been doing is looking at what we can do in terms of sponsorship, what we can do in terms of display advertising in these experiences. Just a few weeks ago, we were able to do monetization on our voice-based platforms through both Alexa and Google Home. It was a partnership that we signed with ABC for a show called True Crime that was, got a pretty good amount of press. So that's kind of the start of how we're going to start monetizing these things. We're having a lot of conversations right now. The good thing is that the brands are very excited about it. They want to play in the space. They want to work with brands that have scale. So there's going to be opportunity. We just have to figure out how to work that out.
Comcast isn't interested in making money. No. So, I mean, there's sort of this weird mixture of, obviously, we want to, basically the short answer is, do we have ideas about monetization? Sure. Have we executed on them? No. I've got a lot of really great PowerPoint decks and sort of code snippets where it's here's where we can potentially put an ad image. But there's sort of a lot of different factors at play. One of the larger ones from my perspective is, for example, this morning we just had the concert series brought to you by Citi. And that brings in, I believe the exact number is a flobbity-jillion dollars. So having to then go to a similar ad sales force and say, hey, would you also like to include the bot in this? It's a bit of a distraction for them. So it's certainly it's unlikely that it's going to be its own sort of thing. And we run into this not just with bots, but with lots of the emerging media stuff. For example, we always talk about wouldn't it be great if we could launch podcasts? But our ad sales force isn't reaching out to people like Squarespace. Sorry if there's anyone from Squarespace here. It's a different sort of size thing. So if anything, it would be like an add-on to some much larger deal. And when that happens, it'll be great. But it's a different scale of thing. And so. And the ad sales, and not to diss on our ad sales people, they're great and they are thinking about it as well. But for the moment, as much as you keep hearing TV is dying, we're doing okay. So they're certainly preparing for it, and part of this is me showing them this is how you can do it whenever you're ready, and then being ready for that moment when it finally happens and just execute on it.
I'll say one thing just based on today's news. Advertisers are salivating over the Echo show. We've been working with Amazon for a while on this, and you said you guys have been working on this too, and they want that screen. They don't understand how to advertise on something that isn't visual, outside of podcasts and stuff. So they're really excited about this.
Maybe this is a stupid comment, but I'm very, very scared about advertising inside bots because that may ruin the experience of the users. And then the expectations that they will have from a bot experience is going to ruin not the industry itself, but usually when something cool happens, it's cool until advertising comes. So it's mainly if we don't put an effort into actually making transactions inside the bot about the value that the bot is providing, I would love to monetize that way, like Swell is doing or other competitors are doing. It's mainly try to get this monetization thing from the value that you are providing to the user, not from advertising. And I will fight for this in the bot space forever.
We got to...
No, so we've done a couple of experiments around sponsored messages, and there's a whole bunch of different models that are out there that, and I think our focus really, we went down that path, and we went back into what's the engagement model that we needed to find. What's the other sort of role bot that we can then use, probably repurpose it for a publishing experience. And so I think in the, hopefully not in the too distant future, we'll start to see different models start to emerge. I sort of tend to agree with you as well. I'm sort of sit in the middle, actually, because I need to serve these publishers, and then I need to serve the user. The user doesn't want to see ads in the space, so there's other ways of doing it, like brand integrated chat experiences is another alternative as well.
I was gonna say, yeah, I just wanted to clarify the point of the minute that ad sales does sort of start coming in first, it's not like we're going to start basically doing whatever the pop-up ad version of for bots is. Like we're much more, because again, it's still a very sort of tenuous space for us with the users that we have, and we don't want to create an experience where we lose those users as well. Like my favorite example, because again, we're not monetizing ourselves, but if anyone signs up for the New York Times is the Daily, the text message alert that you can get with that, I think their execution of ads is great, because basically what you get every once in a while is just an image. Most of that image is just the branding for the Daily, and then there's this little side part of the image that says like brought to you by BMW, and it's not clickable, it's not anything like that, but it's there and it's subtle, and it's, you know, and then you're also getting a message that says here's the next one. It's just it's very well integrated and not at all painful.
So we had a question in the back.
Before, I just want to say one thing. Sorry about this. Just because, like, in the advertising, because I don't want to pretend like I'm the devil, and this is when I know I'm in San Francisco and not New York, where everyone's like, "Ooh, advertising, tell us more." You know, I think, like, you know, we have ads on Facebook now. That's doing pretty well. Like advertising. I mean, I don't love advertising. I never want to do it in terms of in terms of like to the detriment of the user. But at the same time, you can monetize things that you normally wouldn't be able to with ads, and you can do it in a non-intrusive way. And I think that a lot of places on the internet have gone toward advertising, and I think they're doing just fine and haven't lost a lot of users because of it. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, you're probably going to have to shout on the back.
So actually, that's a very good question. I would say that you need to provide a user with the option of, for example, if you want to get something solved, self-service, then you have the bot. So you go to I don't know, you have a problem with Ryanair. You go there. Do you want to solve the problem by yourself, or do you want to talk with an agent and wait 50 minutes on the phone, or you want to send an email and wait 4 days, or you want to stay in a live chat and wait 10 minutes? So I think, from our perspective, is mainly let's put a choice in the user about what they want to do. If they want self-service, let's do the bot. If they don't want self-service, let's do the agent. But we, at least in our ethos at Reply.ai, is mainly never trick the user that your bot is a human. Never, ever. And there are many competitors out there from Reply that do not agree with that. They want to augment the agent side. We do not believe in that. Maybe in a few years we will. But I would say that always provide to the user the two options. I will be more happy to talk with a bot if it can solve my question, 100%. Maybe there is other person who loves to talk with human agents. Then let's do that.
Yeah, for me, it's about providing value and what's the value exchange with a bot and with the user, and whether that experience is in a one-to-one or is it in a one-to-many in a group. So if a bot doesn't provide value, then you're not going to engage in it. But if you can come up with a sort of value exchange model or a user experience that does that, then of course, I think you mentioned that before. It's what are the friction points? What are we trying to overcome? Like, for example, the robot provides entertainment. The CNN bot on the election day provided information.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. Like, one of the things we talk about is, in terms of the engagement and how many people talking back to the bots. I actually, for some of our bots, I don't even worry about that. I don't need you to talk. I don't need anyone to talk back to it. It's serving the purpose by simply sending out a notification. Like, one of my favorite bots is the Score, which just tells me anytime something's happening with Tottenham Hotspur. Or the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's all I need. I don't need to talk to it. I don't need to ask about how's Harry Kane's leg. I just want to know if there's breaking news or if there's a score update or something like that, and it's still engaging.
What about in terms of the different? What about, we were talking about the publishing side, but from an AOL, like from a customer service or anything like that, I mean, I think we talked to bots, and I think it's been touted that, hey, it makes it simpler than going through a traditional IVR. How does that work?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like for a service, for instance, for MoviePhone, you know, you're actually providing a service. When is Guardians of the Galaxy playing? What's the closest theater? When are tickets available? That's when we're providing a service. That's a utility. The same thing we work with. You know, we work with the Verizon team. Essentially, like the Verizon team would absolutely love to not have customer service representatives anymore, and would just utilize bots to say like, hey, there's something wrong with my phone, or like why. And so like, yeah, it would like, yeah, and so like, you know, and so like that's a service, and we talk to them all the time about how that's going to eventually happen, but that's a completely different thing. It's like one of those like utility versus just media and publishing.
Hey, I don't have a question. I just want to say thanks, Omar, for advocating against ads. I understand they will come eventually. Totally get it, but I do believe that it's like a crucial step in user adoption that we don't spam them right away. I think people have a bad perception of the term bot right now, as it is with, you know, AOL, Tinder, the Russian election stuff, whatever that is.
It's a great choice of collections.
Yeah. Playing that one.
Thanks a lot.
But yeah, thanks for doing that, and I appreciate you doing it.
Cool. Anyone else have questions? Brett, did you still want? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have a question. Yeah. This is a question for Drew. You mentioned that you've got a lot of different properties on a lot of different platforms, and you like to match the platform to the content and audience. But it sounded like you have a back end where you're trying to basically take the content and serve similar content across all platforms. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we have a common back end that can then, you know, we customize to the different front end experiences. So we have a bunch of different API endpoints for content on the Huffington Post, which might be trending stories, velocity, top stories, stories about X, Y, and Z. And then we can just kind of plug into any of those based on how, you know, what's important. So the same thing with structured data on Engadget, understanding review structure, pricing on items. The same thing with MoviePhone, understanding, looking at the structured data, being able to plug that in, and then having that API, those outputs being updated based on how you're interacting with the platform that you're on, whether it's Google Home, whether it's whether it's Alexa, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Slack.
So is that something you just use internally? Like HuffPost is famous for building its own content management system early on. Is that an internal tool, or is that something you're going to make available to other developers?
It's internal right now. I think we're still figuring out the strategy of what we want to do specifically around. We have about 32 different CMSs that we deal with at AOL, and that's including any potential that we would come in with a merger that might be happening soon, that another company might have some too. So we're trying to figure some of that stuff out. But we would love to make those things public as a service, in decisions.
Anyone else have any questions?
Hi, I have a question around design ethics. So do you have any, ethical considerations that go into your bot strategy and the respective products? And so I'm interested in kind of digging deeper into the point that Sergio raised earlier about, making sure that people understand that bots are not humans. And so I'd like to hear more about that.
I mean, I don't know if I'd call that design ethics. That makes it sound like it's much more like a morality question. When we launched the Today Food Bot, we sort of saw very quickly that people, because our audience is a little bit older, they would, despite the fact that they'd be getting the same answers back from things, they clearly got angry with us because they thought it was a person. And so up front, we had to make it very clear, like, this is all automated. This is not a person. And in fact, I feel like there was a question we might have talked about, like, would there be things in platforms you'd love to change? Like the thing on the Facebook pages that says, like, this messenger responds in moments. Like, if we could also say, and it's a bot, that would really help us out. And maybe other people have problems with that, but I'm totally okay with that. And so being able to say, like, this is, just make it, like, because this is the problem we have with bots, and also with even like chatbots and voice bots, this idea of just how do we make it clear what the expectations are. Because that was also, I think, a lot of the problem with why you get that thing about people saying things are overhyped, because people went into it and thought, like, chatbots, great, I can treat all of them like they're Siri and ask them anything. And that's where we got into trouble, where people were massively disappointed by what they got, as opposed to being able to say, this is what it does, we're going to focus on one thing, we're going to do it really well, anything else we'll try to point you in the right direction, maybe, but or not. And just that's where I take it from the standpoint of, like, how do we set that expectation up front? And then with that, then not lead the user astray, because the last thing we want to do is anger our users. So that's where we're certainly thinking about our users first. So that's, I don't know if that sort of answers your sort of design ethics question.
Today, I will strongly suggest to not mimic a human. I would say that you need to make it personalized. Maybe it can be a character. You need to make it friendly. You need to put a lot of effort into content. But try to set up the objective first. Like, what's this bot is going to do? And implicitly or explicitly say that it's a bot or a machine or whatever. Because just imagine the worst case scenario. What happens when a person realizes that it was a bot, that it's a bot, and they thought that it was a human? You have lost that user forever. So today, I think that maybe in 4 years when the technology catches up, maybe I think otherwise, but today I will strongly suggest about trying to mimic a human.
I had a quick question. Sorry, I'm out here.
Oh, hi.
Hi, I think this is probably more for Sergio and Kik. I noticed that the chat platforms in like other regions like WeChat or Kakao are trying to mimic like the Facebook.com kind of thing, where they are the ones doing ads, not the people building bots. Is that something that you see happening in the US and like the Western market as well?
Could you repeat that again?
Yeah, so there are like platforms like WeChat and Kakao where they are actually offering brands ways to advertise on the platform. So in between interactions, they'd be like, here's something like a banner ad, here's something like a brand ad. So is that something you see that happening in the US or in the Western market as well?
It's a good question. I think, so WeChat, Kakao, and those other platforms are a lot more mature than the US market, for one. And I think what we're trying to define here, what does chat mean in the US for the Western culture? They skipped a lot of steps to get to WeChat or get to chat first. And so they were very fast in terms of trying to define what the engagement model was. Whereas I think we're sort of a bit behind that mark. I think the temptation will always be advertising model or trying to come up with different ways to promote different brands or bots. So that'll come, but it'll take us a little bit longer to get there. Primarily because we're way more fragmented than WeChat or Korea and China. So we have a few platforms trying to, get into the US market, and then, eventually, it'll start to evolve.
Cool, and I guess I'll end up with one question here. What do you guys think is going to be the future of the bots moving forward? And we'll start with Omar, and then we'll move down the line.
So I think we are going to see lots of use cases that are going to be much more successful than we think today. Most likely, every single business in few years are going to have some kind of interaction. Maybe most likely restaurants, fitness studios, all of them. And big brands today, they are going to experiment. Most of them are going to see it such as a new advertising thing. But I think that the ones who really work hard to make a better experience, they're going to be the winners, and customer service is going to change completely.
I think I mentioned this before. I think it'll be the hub of everything we do in our everyday life. from conversations in groups to friends and family, and then, start to scale into other areas like shopping. But I think the other thing where it'll be interesting and where I'm bullish on is how do we, start to bridge the gap between online to offline, and how do we then reduce the friction or let conversational UX to remove some of the friction there?
Yeah, I think that it's very possible that bots are going to become chat apps and bots are going to be the new browser. You're going to be, kind of to your point, you're going to be doing everything in there. I want to buy a new pair of jeans. I want to find out when my movie's playing. So I think that's going to be coming. The other thing is that I believe 100% in voice. I think that voice is the new interaction point. Just like kids now expect that they can touch every single screen and move things around. In 5 years, every kid is going to expect that they can talk to every single piece of hardware and expect some sort of response from it.
I don't suppose you have the... So I get asked this a lot in my job, and especially when I'm talking to someone on an electronic platform, my gut just quick response is I have this like pre-readied YouTube clip from the original Terminator movie. So I just get like, what's the future of bots? And I'll just send that right back, and it's this really terrifying clip. It would have been a lot funnier if we just had it to play versus explaining it, because Ken and I had talked about this before. But the other question I get a lot is also just sort of like, especially from TV, people who are focused on TV executives, sort of what's going to be the future of media? What's the silver bullet? And I just don't think it's really a silver bullet. I think it's really a silver shotgun, and that we sort of have to be good at lots of different things. There's not going to be one monolithic thing that's going to replace television. And as much as chatbots may be a hub, and everyone's going to want to use voice, it's not going to. I really don't think it's going to be the only thing. So we still have to be good at lots of different stuff. And while yes, there are certain companies that can certainly focus on that, at a company like say NBC Universal, to move forward properly, we need to be good at everything.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. You want to do one last one? Oh.
Hi, I'm Nikolai. I think you kind of answered it, but I think that the bot should be like situation aware. Like when I'm at work, I would really like to text with it. When I'm in the car, I would really like to talk to it. When I'm home, when I'm doing stuff, I like to talk to it. But when I'm not doing stuff, I like to chat with it. Like, you have to have that ambiguity to like how we interact with the bot, right? What's your thoughts?
I would like that too. So this is where it gets into a tough situation, because again, I deal with a large corporation, and so a lot of these conversations when we launch our new platform is the tough conversation I have to have with our legal team, and because there's a lot of privacy concerns. So if someone has opted in to give us all that information, great. We can create a great experience for them, but we can't do a situation where they don't know. That is creepy and weird, and that'll get us in trouble. And that's not something I want to. Again, like as to the design ethics question earlier, I don't want to create a scenario where we've creeped someone out or made someone angry as to be like, "How did you know I was home?" So yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you to Andrew, Drew, Sergio, and Omar. And on we go.